All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Raed Bkayrat. I'm with the Clean Energy Business Council. On behalf of our chairman, Dr. Nasser Saidi, and our board, I would like to welcome you to Renault Arabian Automobiles. It's a pleasure to have you here tonight with our first open event for FMC, our Future Mobility Club. Before we start, I would like just to give you maybe a little bit of a little bit of background on how this whole thing came about for CEBC and FMC and so on. Today, actually, I was in Abu Dhabi at the council meetings for IRENA, and I had a chance to listen about what's happening in the market and the latest figures. And it's interesting. I mean, the numbers continue to be alarming per IRENA reports, and how to tie that to mobility as a concept with the energy transition and so on. The numbers that are projected, the total emissions globally, and this is per IRENA, for the last 5 years have been growing at 1.5% every year. When the intent, and you would think there is a lot happening in sustainability and mobility and clean energy and so on, the intent or the plan is to reduce by 3.5% total emissions on a global scale every year if we are able, or if we intend to maintain a 2 degrees Celsius rise. And you probably have heard of the impact of temperature rise and global warming and so on. So it's a point that was debated heavily at IRENA today on the government level and what needs to happen and so on. Another interesting point that was discussed today is that our carbon allowance, if you want to call it an allowance, we're allowed to emit so much if you want to stay within the 2-degree rise. Our allowance will expire. We have used all our allowance by 2030. Studies used to say 2040, it's 2050, so it's no longer a 100-year thing that our next generations will suffer with it. We will suffer with what's happening on the climate. So take that into perspective. This is why CEBC, the Clean Energy Business Council, has been formed. And this is why we kicked off the working group on FMC. Now, when we talk about energy transition and mobility, I mean, mobility as a concept is a standalone topic of itself. It's not necessarily directly related or driven by the energy transition, but there are correlations and parallels you can draw between the two. And it's not just about, obviously, electric vehicles or one isolated element. It has much more wider concept that I think you'll hear more of today from the distinguished speakers and panels. But if you take mobility and look at elements such as electrification, for example, what's happening with EVs, the ability to decarbonize electrification with renewables, that ties into energy transition, so that feeds into exactly what's happening with the installations of solar and wind onto the grid. Take the element of automation, autonomous vehicles, and its impact on the ecosystem, service providers, insurance companies. Take another element of ride sharing and the notion that nobody will own a vehicle the next 10 years and so on. These are all concepts that we try to focus on within CEBC and within the FMC group. So to give you a bit of a background, I really don't want to take too much time from the speakers. CEBC, Clean Energy Business Council, is a not-for-profit entity created about 6 years ago. We're registered in Masdar, and we aim really to bridge the gap initially between the private sector as a whole, so we act as a voice of the industry, and the government. Clean energy in general is a new industry. It's still nascent, I would say, in our region. And there are gaps that need to be addressed, so the industry has to work together to address these gaps, be it into customer awareness or even government awareness, official awareness, defining the economics, introducing technologies, work on regulations, which is a huge topic for FMC, and other areas. And typically, we address it. You can go through the slides, Ahmed, just briefly. Typically, we address it through in multiple vehicles. So we do white papers on topics. This year, we launched our survey, looking at the status of the marketplace, clean energy, and looking at gender in clean energy. We do workshops, typically on specific topics. And we have also working groups. You can go to the slide on the working groups. So currently, we have the Future Mobility Club, FMC. We have also a working group on energy efficiency, and it goes into subgroup as well. In energy efficiency, we have an industrial group and an energy advocacy group. We focus on women in the industry. We have a school program, and we have a climate finance working group. And these groups, by the way, they're not defined by anybody sitting, managing or trying to manage CEBC. It's defined by the members or the founding members. So for example, FMC was kicked off originally by Angie, and Stefan Gobert will talk a little bit about the club and the goals and objectives. I mean, with that, I think I'll just go to the slides. It's important to thank the team, Ahmed, for the work that he's done to put this together and the guidance from the steering committee. I think we need to recognize the founding members of the steering committee, Renault, NG, Green Parking, Bolt, and Ivera, for the effort that they're putting forward. As it stands today, members in CEBC can choose to focus on a working group. So to participate in one of the working groups, you can join CEBC and then participate in the working group that you're interested in. And these are the members of CEBC that are active in the FMC group. And of course, would like to thank the sponsors, Renault, NG, Arabian Automobiles, Rostomani, for hosting us today. I think the venue is great. It gives you a nice industrial feel, and you can smell the tires, as they say, a little bit. So